What we had, Emily echoed. Surprised. Daniel smiled a sad, wistful smile. There was something between us, even if it wasn't real back then. I felt it every time I saw you. Emily thought back to those years, the stolen glances, the brief smiles, the way her heart had fluttered despite herself. She had told herself it was nothing. That Daniel was just a boy. But maybe it wasn't nothing. The car slowed as they approached a red light. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle, and the city felt still, like it was holding its breath. Daniel reached for her hand, his fingers warm and steady around hers. "I'm serious now, Emily," he said. "I'm not a kid anymore. I want to be with you. You'll let me." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. She looked down at their intertwined hands, the warmth of his touch spreading through her like a gentle flame. "It's not that simple," she said, her voice trembling. "You're my boss's son. There's a lot at stake." Daniel nodded, squeezing her hand. "I know, but I don't care about the complications. I care about you." The light turned green, and Daniel carefully navigated the car forward. But neither of them looked away from each other. Emily's mind raced. She wanted to believe in this, to believe in the chance at happiness that Daniel was offering, but old fears and wounds made her hesitate. "What if I get hurt again?" she whispered. Daniel's expression softened, full of empathy. "I can't. Promise it won't be hard," he said, honestly. "But I promise I'll be honest. I'll be here." Quiet understanding passed between them, for the first time in years. Emily felt the fragile stirrings of hope. The car turned onto her street, the familiar sight of her apartment building coming into view. Street lamps cast pools of golden light on the wet pavement, and Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. Daniel pulled to a stop in front of her building. They sat there for a moment, the world outside continuing its quiet rhythm. Finally, Daniel looked at her with a seriousness that made her heart ache. "Whatever you decide," he said, "I just want you to know that I care about you. More than you might realize." Emily smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes for the first time in a long while. "Thank you," she said softly, "for this night and for telling me the truth." Daniel returned her smile, his eyes warm and hopeful, as she opened the door and stepped out into the cool night. Emily realized something profound. Maybe love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. Maybe it was about moments like this, honest conversations, gentle touches, and the courage to risk opening one's heart again. She looked back at Daniel just as he started the car, and in his eyes she saw a promise of something new, something worth exploring. And for the first time in a long time, Emily allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future where she could be seen, loved, and understood. The rain had stopped, but in the quiet between them, a new kind of storm was quietly gathering, one filled with hope, longing, and the fragile beauty of a love waiting to be born. Emily felt tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. "I remember you." "Good," he said, relief softening his voice, "because I never forgot you. Not once." A silence fell again between them. This time, it was different, comfortable, filled with the unspoken understanding that something new was awakening. Emily finally broke the quiet. "Did you come back for your mom or for me?" Daniel's laugh was quiet but genuine. "Honestly, at first it was just family stuff. But the more time I spent here, the more I realized there was something I needed to figure out, something I'd left unfinished." Emily turned to him fully now, searching his face for answers. "And what is that?" He hesitated. "You?" Her heart skipped a beat. Emily was not a woman to give herself away easily. She had learned to protect her heart from the disappointments of love, from hopes dashed too soon. But Daniel's honesty, his quiet longing, broke through the cracks she'd built. "You make it sound so simple," she said, a sad smile touching her lips. "It's never simple," he admitted. "But sometimes the hardest things are worth fighting for." Emily looked away again, overwhelmed by the sudden surge of emotions she hadn't expected to feel in this car ride home. For years, she had convinced herself she was better off alone, strong enough to face life without anyone else's love complicating things. But Daniel's presence, his confession, challenged everything she thought she knew about herself. "Do you think there's a chance for us?" she whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. Daniel reached over, gently brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "I don't know," he said softly. But I'm willing to find out. You are?" Emily's breath caught. The warmth in his eyes was nothing like she'd ever seen before. Not just youthful infatuation, but something deeper, rooted in years of watching from afar, of silent admiration. The car slowed as they approached a traffic light. The world outside was washed clean by rain, the city lights reflecting on puddles like scattered stars. Emily felt a fragile hope stir inside her. Maybe this unexpected ride home was more than a coincidence. Maybe it was the beginning of something new, something neither of them could have planned, but both might need. Daniel glanced at her one last time before the light turned green. "Whatever happens," he said, voice steady but tender, "I want you to know this moment is real for me." Emily nodded, her heart aching and soaring all at once. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where someone saw her not just as the boss's loyal employee, but as a woman worthy of love and longing. As the car moved forward into the night, Emily realized that sometimes the space between two people is filled not with distance, but with possibilities. Would you like me to continue with the same expanded style for part 3 next? "You said explain part 3 in 1,000 words, ChatGPT said. "Got it. Here's an expanded, detailed version of part 3, The Road, and what it revealed about 1,000 words, continuing the emotional and romantic tension between Emily and Daniel, deepening their connection and the stakes. Part 3, The Road, and what it revealed, expanded approximately 1,000 words. The black Audi glided through the quiet streets, the city's neon reflections dancing faintly on the rain-washed asphalt. The rain had almost stopped, leaving behind a cool, damp night that smelled faintly of wet pine and fresh earth. Inside the car, the atmosphere was dense with words left unspoken. Emily sat still, her hands folded tightly in her lap, staring at the dim dashboard lights. She could feel Daniel's eyes on her occasionally, like a silent question he was too nervous to voice. Finally, breaking the silence, Daniel cleared his throat. "You seem different from how I remember you," he said softly. Emily swallowed. "I guess I am. Life changes people." Daniel nodded, understanding in his expression. "It's been a tough few years," Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've learned a lot about loss, about holding on and letting go." Daniel's gaze deepened. "I'm sorry." She gave a small, tired smile. "It's okay. It made me who I am." For a moment, the car felt like a small, fragile bubble in the vast world, a place where two people, so different yet so connected, could share a quiet space without the weight of expectations. Daniel's voice broke through the quiet again, gentler this time. "Emily, I know I'm younger, and I know I'm your boss's son, so this might be complicated." Emily looked up sharply, surprised by his frankness. "But I'm not a kid anymore," he continued. "And I'm not here to play games or waste your time." He shifted in his seat, searching her face. "I'm here because I care about you. Because I've thought about you every day since I left." Emily's heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "Why didn't you say anything before?" she whispered. Daniel hesitated, then sighed. "I was scared. Scared of ruining things. Scared that you'd see me as just a kid who didn't know what he wanted." He reached over and lightly touched her hand, resting on her lap, a careful, tentative gesture. "I'm serious now. And I want you to know that." Emily's breath caught. The warmth of his touch was like a small flame against the cold of her guarded heart. The car slowed at a red light, the city stretching out silently around them. "You don't have to say yes. Daniel said quickly. "I'm not asking for anything." Emily looked into his eyes, the same eyes she remembered, now deeper, more open, full of something she hadn't expected, hope. "I just needed you to know." For a long moment, the world outside disappeared. There was only the car, the rain, and the fragile connection growing between them. Emily wanted to tell him everything, the heartbreak she'd carried, the loneliness that sometimes felt crushing, the fear of letting someone in again. But words stuck in her throat. Instead, she did something braver. She looked at him and let herself hope. "Maybe," she said softly, "we could see where this goes." Daniel's smile was the first true one she'd seen all night, warm, genuine, filled with possibility. The light turned green. The car moved forward, but neither of them rushed to break the fragile spell. As Daniel turned onto her street, the glow of street lamps illuminated Emily's face, revealing the mix of emotions she was trying to hide: hope, fear, excitement, and a quiet longing she hadn't dared to acknowledge before. When he finally pulled up in front of her apartment, the moment felt suspended in time. Daniel didn't reach for the door immediately. Instead, he turned to her, eyes serious. "Whatever happens next," he said, "I want you to know that you deserve happiness. And I want to be someone who helps you find it." Emily felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from the weight of the confession. She had spent so long feeling invisible, unworthy of that kind of love. And now, here it was, offered with no expectations, no pressure, just honesty. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words escaped her. Daniel smiled softly, reached out, and brushed a strand of wet hair behind her ear. "Take your time," he said gently. Emily nodded, her heart aching with a mix of vulnerability and hope. As she stepped out into the cool night air, she realized something important. Maybe love wasn't about rushing in or fixing everything at once. Maybe it was about moments like this: quiet confessions, shared silences, and the courage to be seen. Daniel watched her go up the stairs, then started the car again. As the headlights disappeared into the night, Emily stood at her door, her thoughts swirling with new questions. Could she trust this feeling? Could she open her heart again? For the first time in years, she wasn't sure. And maybe that was exactly the point. The soft glow of the dashboard lights cast a warm, intimate hue over the interior of the car. Outside, the city streets shimmered under the street lamps, the rain-slicked pavement reflecting the gentle dance of orange and white lights. The steady hum of the engine and the rhythmic sweep of the windshield wipers were the only sounds filling the quiet space between Emily and Daniel. Emily glanced over at Daniel, who was focused on the road but seemed slightly tense, his jaw tight, eyes flickering occasionally toward her, like he wanted to say something but was afraid it might change everything. For a long moment, they shared silence, a silence thick with everything unsaid. Finally, Daniel broke it, his voice low and steady. "You seem different," he said, "more guarded than I remember." Emily looked away, out the window at the rain-splattered world. She didn't want to share everything, not yet. But the truth was, she was different. Life had a way of changing people, carving lines into their hearts that were hard to erase. "It's been a hard few years," she confessed quietly. "Some things changed me." Daniel's eyes softened, understanding. But there was also something curious, a longing to know more. "I'm sorry," he said, softly. "I didn't mean to pry, no," she said quickly. "It's okay, I guess. I've learned a lot about loss, about what it means to hold on and to let go." Daniel nodded, absorbing her words. "It sounds painful." "It was," Emily admitted. "But it also made me who I am." She realized she was talking more freely than she had in a long time. There was something about the intimacy of the car-confined space, the rain outside, that made barriers feel less necessary. Daniel reached over and brushed a damp strand of hair from her forehead. The gesture was gentle, but filled with an unspoken tenderness. "I've thought about you so much," he said, voice almost a whisper. When I was in London, every day I wondered how you were. If you were happy, if you were lonely. Emily's heart clenched. No one had ever looked at her like that before, not even the people she'd loved. The sky over Portland had turned the color of slate by 5 p.m., the kind of gloomy, aching gray that made everything feel a little heavier. Rain poured steadily, soaking the sidewalks and painting the glass windows of Blake & Co. Architecture in long streaks. Inside the quiet office, most of the team had already clocked out, eager to beat the weekend traffic and settle into their homes before the rain turned worse. Emily Carter stood near the front doors, her fingers wrapped tightly around the strap of her bag, her coat damp at the sleeves. Her ride had just canceled. Her neighbor, who usually gave her a lift home on Fridays, texted last minute to say her son was sick. Emily sighed. Watching the street through the rain-streaked glass, taxis would take forever in this weather. Rideshares were surging. She opened her phone, hesitated. She wasn't in the mood for a $40 ride to get 6 miles home, just as she stepped outside beneath the front awning. Her phone buzzed again this time. A message from her boss, Margaret Blake. "Sorry to leave so fast. Have a lovely weekend. Emily, you're a lifesaver as always." Margaret was kind but distant in that executive way. Emily had worked as her project coordinator for the last 4 years. Efficient, quiet, dependable. That's how most people described her. She liked it that way. She wasn't one for drama or office gossip. She preferred order, structure. But on days like this, Ronnie, Lonely Friday's structure felt more like a cage than comfort. A sudden beam of headlights pulled up to the curb in front of her. A sleek black Audi rolled to a smooth stop, the kind of car that only executives or the very wealthy owned. The window on the driver's side lowered slowly, and there he was. "Need a ride?" The voice was deeper than she remembered, familiar, but older, more grounded. It was Daniel Blake, Margaret's son. Emily froze, blinking against the rain. Daniel had always been something of a mystery to the office, younger than most of the staff. He'd occasionally appeared during school breaks, charming, curious, always smiling at her in the hallways. But then, 3 years ago, he'd left for London to study urban design. Since then, Emily had only seen glimpses of him, photos on Margaret's desk. Stories she overheard in meetings, quick mentions during lunchroom chatter. And now, here he was. Taller, broader, with wind-blown hair and a 5 o'clock shadow that didn't suit the boyish version she remembered. Emily hesitated. "Daniel," he nodded, offering a crooked grin. "I was picking up something from Mom's office. Saw you out here looking like you might blow away. I'm headed toward the Hawthorne district, still your neighborhood." She blinked, surprised. He remembered. "Yeah," she said slowly, her voice catching in her throat. "I was about to call a car." "You don't need to do that," he said casually. "Hop in. I promise I'm not a terrible driver anymore." She laughed softly, despite the awkwardness. After a beat of indecision, she opened the door and slipped into the passenger seat. The warmth of the car wrapped around her instantly, and the faint scent of cedar and clean cologne filled the space. He pulled away from the curb. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The soft hum of the heater, the occasional swish of the windshield wipers, and the sound of tires on wet pavement filled the quiet. "You've changed," she said finally, glancing sideways at him. He smirked. "Good changed or bad changed?" "Grown up." "Changed," she said, folding her damp hands in her lap. "I remember you with that messy skateboard and energy drinks." Daniel chuckled. "Don't remind me. I think I lived off those for 2 years straight. London beat that out of me. Now I'm more of an oat latte kind of guy." That made her laugh. There was something easy about being around him. Even though she hadn't seen him in years, the conversation didn't feel forced. Yet, beneath the lightness, something felt different, charged, like an undertone running just beneath the surface. So she said, "Done with school, finished in June, been back a few months. I've been helping my dad with some development projects." He glanced at her. "Trying to figure out what life looks like here now?" Emily nodded, staring out the window. The trees lining the streets blurred into soft shadows. She couldn't help but notice how much more serious he seemed, not just in how he looked, but in how he spoke. Slower, more thoughtful. "You look tired," he said, not unkindly. She glanced at him, surprised. "That obvious?" "A little," he admitted. "Long day." "Long week," she replied. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever have a weekend that doesn't start with me dragging myself home." Daniel didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was quieter. "My mom talks about you a lot. Says you're the only one keeping the place from falling apart." Emily smiled, but there was no real joy in it. "That sounds about right." Daniel glanced at her again, longer this time. "But what about you? Who's holding you together?" Question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No one had asked her that in a long time. Maybe ever. "I managed," she said finally. They drove in silence for a few minutes. The streets were quieter now, the rain tapering off to a soft drizzle. The dashboard lights cast a warm glow over Daniel's profile, strong jaw. Kind eyes, the edge of a smile that seemed like it was hiding something. "You know," he said, as they passed the bridge that led to her part of town, "I used to come by the office just to see you." Emily turned sharply. "What?" Daniel kept his eyes on the road. "Back then, when I was still in school, I'd bring my mom lunch sometimes. But it wasn't about her." She felt her breath catch. "I liked seeing you," he continued. "You always looked like you belonged in that world, even if you were doing all the work behind the scenes. There was something about you, steady, kind, like a quiet anchor." Emily didn't know what to say. The weight of his words settled between them like mist. Was he just being kind, nostalgic? Or was there more hiding in his voice? Her thoughts were spinning. But one thing was suddenly clear. This wasn't just a polite ride home anymore. Something was shifting, and Emily didn't know if she was ready for it. The rain had finally softened into a gentle drizzle, but inside, the black Audi. The air felt thick, charged with a mix of unspoken words and memories. Neither Emily nor Daniel knew how to untangle just yet. The city lights glistened on the wet streets outside, casting flickers of amber and white onto their faces. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Emily's eyes were fixed out the window, watching the blurred shapes of trees and passing cars. Daniel's gaze remained steady on the road, but his fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel, betraying a restless energy beneath his calm exterior. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "You know," he began, "I used to come by the office just to see you." Emily turned sharply toward him, startled. "What?" He gave a small, shy smile, the kind that softened the hard lines on his face. "Back when I was still in school, I wasn't just visiting my mom, hoping to catch a glimpse of you." Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. She looked away, out the window again, her heart suddenly heavier. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked quietly. Daniel sighed, a sound mixed with frustration and regret. "Because I was young, and you seemed so out of my reach. You were always so focused, so mature. I didn't think someone like Majez the boss's kid would ever be on your radar." Emily's mind raced back to those days. Daniel was still that bright, lively boy who sometimes popped in to bring coffee or tease his mother. But Emily was the older woman at the office, navigating adult responsibilities, heartbreak, and loneliness behind her professional calm. "I never thought about you that way," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "You were always the kid." "I know," Daniel said softly, "but I wasn't just a kid anymore. Not to myself, at least." He glanced over at her, eyes searching. Emily felt a strange mix of warmth and caution. She was 32, no longer. The carefree woman she'd been before life's disappointments settled in. She had loved on lost and learned that some feelings weren't easy to welcome back, especially from someone she had never expected. "You've changed." she said finally, her voice trembling with a blend of sadness and something else she didn't want to name. Daniel smiled again, but this time it was tinged with vulnerability. I hope so. London did that to me. I had to grow up fast, figure out what I want from life. He paused. And part of that was realizing I never stopped thinking about you. Emily's chest tightened. She looked down at her hands, clenched lightly in her lap. Why tell me this now? She asked. Because I couldn't keep it inside anymore. He replied honestly. I've watched from a distance for so long, watching you work late nights. Watching you hide that quiet sadness behind your smile. I wanted you to know someone sees you. Really sees you. She swallowed hard, the confession settling over her like a heavy rain. Emily had spent years burying her feelings, putting up walls to keep the pain from coming back. But Daniel's words stirred something fragile inside her, something she thought had died long ago. I don't know what to say, she admitted. This is unexpected. Daniel gave a soft chuckle. I'm not asking you to say anything. Just listen. The car rolled gently over a bump in the road, and Emily's eyes met his in the dim light. I was scared to come back, he continued. Scared that I'd find you changed or worse, that you wouldn't remember me at all.